Hi everyone. Welcome to ACAD Asia. ACAD Asia is a Singapore-based impact-driven edtech startup that empowers the largest online community of education institutions and educators in Asia to upskill and reskill themselves to improve the learning outcomes for their 21st century learners. On acadasia.com, educators can access 4 specific services. First, CollabEd, a social networking service that empowers education institutions to build their international network from all over Asia, and where individual educators can join a wide range of communities of teaching learning practice and engage in peer-to-peer learning. Second, SkillEd, a professional development service that empowers educators to upskill and reskill themselves by accessing more than 1,000 hours of professional development content, all with formal CPD accreditations. In addition to this, academic managers from education institutions can track, measure, and improve the efficacy of all professional development that their faculty access on the platform, thus leading to better learning outcomes for their students. Third, DesignEd, the easiest course builder on the planet. In 5 simple steps, this service empowers educators to build fun, engaging, and quality content for their learners. Furthermore, third-party tools like Canva, Google, etc. are fully integrated right into DesignEd. Fourth, CertifyEd, a digital credentialing service that empowers education institutions to design, award, and track fully verifiable and tamper-proof digital micro-credentials and certificates on the blockchain. Join the largest community of educators in Asia who are already using the platform and sign up for your free lifetime membership at www.acadasia.com today.
All right. Okay. Welcome again, once again, to all our friends from all over the world. We are again today celebrating Webinar Wednesdays here at ACAD Asia. So I'm Roy Platon, the co-founder and chief community officer of ACAD Asia. We are a mission-driven edtech business, and we are here to empower educators everywhere. It's that time of the week again. Webinar Wednesdays, our weekly webinar series. Starting off the month of March 1st, Wednesday, we have our webinar for today. And Webinar Wednesday is very interesting today because now for the entire month of March, we're looking at an entirely different set of topics for this month. This month of March, we're talking about globalization and the future of work and having that local and global mindset. Okay, so we have our guests joining us for this month. Our partner, Nian Polytechnic, one of the most prestigious polytechnics out of Singapore, is our key partner for this month of webinars. So we're very happy that they are joining us to be our panelists and resource speakers for the rest of the month. In particular, just as a quick update to all our friends from all over, again, as we announced last February, ACAD Asia is committed to bringing you the best possible professional development content and community. And as such, we want to be able to continue to support you, our dear teachers and educators, for these kinds of events and webinars. And they include accompanying courses that we will see. Actually, I'll show you on screen. And as you mentioned before, moving forward, starting this March, all these activities will now it's free to watch. You can always join us for our webinars as needed. So this month of March, we have local culture, global mindset. We're looking at globalization, how to build your international network, and developing global mindset with Nian Polytechnic. And this is our topic for today. But as you mentioned before, the accompanying webinar will have a course, and the course, although the webinar is free to watch, is a paid activity. If you would like to earn your CPD points for our Philippine-based users, and of course from our users from all over the world as well, if you would like a certificate to accompany your attendance to the webinar, then you would either have to sign up for a paid account on ACAD Asia. So here, Globalization, the Future of Work, you can click on it and you can see for our friends in the Philippines in particular, it'll be open to the first 5,000 qualified completers by March 31st. You will need to complete the course by March 7th. And then by completing this course, you will earn 2 CPD points. So make sure that you're very interested. Either purchase the course itself, or even better is for the entire year, if you would like to uh, get all the CPD points for free. It's free for members. You can sign up for a one-time yearly fee. If you select this, then just pay either by online bank transfer via GCash, or you can also do credit card, debit card payments by Visa, MasterCard for all other countries. Or if your country also accepts bank payments, whether you're from Indonesia or other Southeast Asian countries or all over the world, we can also do this. And by getting this membership, then you will have access to all the paid content for free, and you will have this for free as part of your CPD point requirements. Okay, so very good value. It's not even more than $2 a month if you compute it, or a few dollars per month. So really great value is to get the annual membership for this course. Okay, so without further ado, just as reminders for those who want to participate and get their certificates for this course, now you know what to do. Um, Firstly, of course, our topic for today is about globalization and the future of work. So, what does actually mean in terms of how we're more connected, and how the changes in technology and the environment and the landscape of the job market is affecting workers, societies, and of course, our educators and our learners. And here we're really going to examine all the things that are impacting the future of work and what that means, and globalization is one of them. So I'll introduce first our guest speakers for today. We have a couple of panelists to join us to discuss a bit more. First, our first guest speaker, she's a distinguished lecturer at the School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Nian Polytechnic. She has over 13 years experience as a lecturer, and currently teaches communication skills, world issues from a Singapore perspective, and contemporary trends in the global economy. From 2011 to 2014, she was based in Wuhan, China, where she taught world issues from a Singapore perspective, report writing, fundamentals of writing creativity, entrepreneurship, and oral communication. Prior to Nian, she was in the publishing and media industry and worked as an editor at various publications, including very much business topics, legal topics, tax and accounting. She has been a publishing manager for Cuisine and Wine Asia, an F&B lifestyle magazine, and has been the associate publisher for the Meal Guide. I hope I pronounced it right. Asia's first authoritative and independent annual guide to the region's best restaurants. Apart from having overseen and produced books, newsletters, and subscriptions of products, software products, and magazines, she has event management, marketing, and public relations experience. So, quite an experienced educator, and she probably has good taste in terms of food and wine. So, I'm very happy to introduce our speaker from the School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Nian Polytechnic, Miss Pauline Oy. Pauline, hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday.
Hi, thank you so much for that very glowing introduction. Hi, Roy.
Yeah, maybe a little later, if while we're talking about globalization and the future of work, you can also share maybe some tips on F&B, right? Because I'm sure you still have some tips on that, some information about how that's also changing. It'll be interesting to discuss that. Fantastic. Okay, of course, for our other panelists, you know him. He's very much a fixture in our events. He is a creative and results-driven visionary, a thought leader with 30 years of experience in the field of entrepreneurship, education, business innovation, media, and technology. Formerly, he was the founding director at Spinoff, the Entrepreneurship Center at Singapore Polytechnic, and he was the chief architect behind the largest entrepreneurship education network in ASEAN, providing entrepreneurship education programs for more than 15,000 students across the region. He's a firm believer in design thinking and design thinking methodologies. He's helped his student teams at that program to actually build their own startups. Two of them have actually won the prestigious Singapore National Youth Entrepreneurship Award in 2017 and 2020. And now with us at ACAD Asia as its one of the co-founders and CEO. He's on a mission to humanize digital education for all by empowering educators everywhere. Through ACAD Asia, We are the largest online community of teachers and educators in Asia with over 300,000 teachers to upskill and reskill themselves in order to improve learning outcomes for 21st century learners. So, with us joining also the panel today is our co founder and CEO of Acadasia, Mr. Nilesh Bhatia. Neil, glad to have you once again.
Hey, Roy. Hi. Good to see you again. Hi, Pauline. Nice
Hi.
meeting you. And hello, everybody from all over the world. Good to see all of you. It's been quite a while since I was here as a panelist, but it's good to be back and really looking forward to a very interesting conversation today.
Thanks so much, Neil. And we're just going to do a couple of shout outs to our friends in the audience now. We have some friends, of course, from the Philippines. And of course, we have a couple of friends from other countries and other regions. Meghalaya. I wonder where that is. I wonder if that's Indonesia. Hello.
That's in India.
Hular.
That's in India.
That's from India. Oh, okay. Welcome, Hular, from that part of the globe. And of course, all our friends from all over the rest of the friends. We have also Clint from Mongolia. Hello. Welcome and for joining us from Bukidnon in the Philippines. And we also have a lot of friends joining us from all over. So thank you again very much for joining us. And so, we'll probably kick things off on this topic. So um, here we actually are looking at globalization and the future of work. Such an interesting topic. It's a great broad strokes. We're coming out of the pandemic, and a lot has happened to us globally as a society. So and the world has continued. We're now returning back to face, and it's like we are having a semblance of what we can call, I say, is a new normal, right? So we're still dealing with the after effects of what's happened before, but now we move ahead, and it's fantastic that we've adapted and continue as educators and as learners in this new environment. But um, persisting and still occurring as we see today is, you know, the impact that the globe and international relations have on each other. Whatever countries we're from, and even the future of work is impacted by this. So I'd like to ask both of you. Maybe we can start with Neil a little bit, and then we can go to Pauline in a while. I know you have some slides, Pauline, that you'd like to share, so we can touch on those later. Um, how do you think? Maybe you can give a brief overview or situation of globalization, the future of work, as we see it in the current moment. As we return to face, what are we looking at? How do you see the future job market, the skills and knowledge required? What's the impact of globalization, the future of work on workers and societies? How do you see these playing out? So maybe you can start with Neil. What are your thoughts on the current situation or today?
Well, thanks, Roy. I think from an education industry perspective, globalization and the future of work are topics which are of great importance as they have a very significant impact on the skills and the knowledge that students need to acquire in order to succeed in the job market. I think with the pandemic, what it really basically showed, it basically accelerated the trends towards globalization and remote work, which were already underway even before the pandemic. In fact, many companies have now embraced remote work and virtual collaboration, and I think Acadasia also is one of them. And this has, in fact, opened up new opportunities for workers in different parts of the world. However, I think, in my view, it has also highlighted the importance of digital skills and the ability to work effectively in a virtual team. And if you look ahead, the job market is likely to continue, to evolve rapidly, with new jobs being created while others becoming obsolete due to automation, and of course now with artificial intelligence. I think everybody's aware of the havoc that ChatGPT has been creating over the last couple of months.
Mm,
This means that workers will need to be adaptable and able to continuously acquire new skills and knowledge to remain competitive in the job market. In terms of skills and knowledge, I think students will need to focus on developing skills that are needed, uh, that are difficult to automate, actually, such as critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence. I think those skills become extremely crucial moving forward. And they will also need to be proficient in digital technologies and be able to work effectively in global and virtual team environments. The impact of these changes on societies is complex, and I think it's pretty multifaceted as well. On the one hand, you have globalization and remote work, which can provide new opportunities for workers in different parts of the world. While on the other hand, they can lead to job losses and displacements in certain industries, for sure. And I think
Mm-hmm.
education institutions will need to play a very critical role in preparing the students for this changing landscape and ensuring that the students are very well equipped with the skills and knowledge they need in order to succeed in the future job market. If not, I think the next generation is in deep trouble. Yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. Yeah, definitely. With all these changes, they have to be kind of more aware of these, especially with these new technologies. Um, and we're seeing, when things are happening, let's say, I'm sure, like even last year, we're coming very close, or already have the 1 year anniversary of the Ukraine Russia war, and how it's affected global supply chains, energy prices, probably contributing to the inflation. And even on that perspective, whether we were kind of coming out of the pandemic or not, it's affecting countries halfway across the globe. And even with technology and all these developments, it also affects like what kind of jobs will be available, what educators need to prepare for to enable the learners to be prepared for that future. Pauline, what's your, I guess, your snapshot? If you can give us also your thoughts on the current situation now in terms of globalization and the work of the future.
Yeah, I agree totally what both of you have pointed out, both Nilash and you, Roy, you have said. Basically, on one hand, there's a lot of change going on the last 3 years, all right, from the pandemic till now. But these changes, as Nilash had pointed out, has been ongoing prior to the pandemic anyway, just accelerated now. And so now we have this accelerated change, and then there is, on top of it, there's already accelerated technological changes even before the pandemic. So this just the speed also is going so fast. I think it's taking. It's catching some educators off, off guard, and I think it might also, of course, catch some of our students off guard, especially those who are about to graduate, those coming going to leave the, finishing up their studies. But what I feel is that we should not be too scared of these changes. We should embrace them. We need to also see everything in the context of, we need to step back further away and see it as a whole and realize that actually the world has always been about change. There's always been globalization. That way we will not panic. We will not do the wrong thing, and I think we can then plan better, more efficiently, more calmly, and then and be able to at least deal with whatever comes to our way in the next few years. There's a lot of change going on, and as you pointed out, Roy, the Ukraine and Russia war really highlighted. I use that as an example in my classes. Really
Mm.
highlighted to the students about globalization. Prior to that, of course, the pandemic, we got affected because with the global trade having a standstill, certain things got, we don't have certain things, certain things run out, run out of stock and so on. But the Ukraine and Russia conflict really showcase how something that's happening in a country that you've never been, you never heard of, or you never really cared about, suddenly it impacted on on canola oil, on some on the on in Singapore, the hawker food prices went up because it's the vegetable oil that Ukraine comes out with is it's widely used here, so the price went up, everything went up. Things like that. It's down to everyday life, so that helped the students really and have a better idea of what globalization really is and how it impacts on us across the world now. I think just not to get too. I think for me, it's a snapshot. It'll be just it's there. We need to acknowledge it. We need to, but we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should just go
Mm.
ahead, embrace it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also part of how our countries, societies, economies are just being more interconnected, so much more, especially today. I mean, uh, even from the advancements of transportation, goods and services and products, like, and that just really then translates to, if it's like the butterfly effect, right? You don't know if one part of the world, so a butterfly flutters its wings and then it affects let's say, how the rice grows in the fields and across the other side of the country, tips over your glass while you're having your nice cup of cocoa or tea. It's just these effects, these ripple effects, they're much more interconnected. So great insight there, Pauline. I just want to remind our audience, if you have any questions for our panelists regarding this fascinating topic on globalization and the future of work, we flashed the Mentimeter link on our screen, and it's posted in the chat on the social media channels that you're watching us from. Please don't hesitate to type that in, put in your questions there, any comments you have, and we'll be sure to kind of discuss that towards the latter part of the session. We'll be spending probably the next hour 15 minutes discussing, but towards the end, we will get to those questions for sure, so that we'd love to hear from you, because it really impacts as well as educators and for our learners. What do these things mean for our own job security, and for our future learners' job security as well? What does it mean? How do we kind of adapt to these changes? I mean, just a quick example as well. In the Philippines, at least in the Philippine economy, very much we are dependent on energy imports such as oil. So when the oil prices shot up, during the war, Ukraine-Russia war, it affected inflationary effects here in the Philippines. So rising prices of commodities, food, and what have you. There's a popular meme in the Philippine market where onions were more expensive than gold.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like there was a time where onions, they used to be maybe around $4 a kilo, and they just exploded to about $10-15 a kilo. It was just ridiculous. And it's like every simple meal you had, if you had onions as part of your garnish, or your sautéing your food and F&B, Pauline, you know this very well. So then it's like your simple daily meal at home, it becomes like 5-star prices. So it's like super and it's happening all over. So that's just an example of the effects of globalization, and how it's impacting us. So yeah, Neil, maybe you can share a little bit more. How else have you seen? You said remote work. You said you talked about AI and robotics. How else are you seeing globalization affecting our future?
Well, actually, I mean, if you just look at remote work, I mean, Roy, you know, at Acad Asia, I mean, just look at ourselves, right? I
Yes.
mean, for those of you who do not know, we are a Singaporean company, we're headquartered in Singapore, but the entire team is remote. We work from different countries, and it's a completely international team. I mean, we have staff based in Manila, we have staff based in Yogyakarta, in Surabaya, in Jakarta. We have, of course, staff in Singapore as well. But it's a real, true, globalized workforce and a remote workforce. Now, frankly, having worked in a polytechnic environment, I'm sure Pauline can probably understand this much better than anybody else. When you're working in a polytechnic, it's a very standard, way of working. You wake up in the morning, you basically go to work, you deal with students, and by about 5:36, if you're lucky, you're back home. And over the semesters, you have to do various other admin tasks and so on and so forth. But now, with Acad Asia as a remote team, I mean, we are working anywhere. We don't have a physical office space. So in fact, personally speaking, I have in fact even relocated out of Singapore. I now live in Bali, and
Nice.
I can pretty much meet my customers and my users and my clients and my staff and my team from anywhere, as long as I have a Wi-Fi connection and a laptop, which just 3 years ago, I would have not even thought of that this would be possible. And everybody, whoever I talk to, they all, are quite amazed that a company like Acad Asia is able to run in this form. I mean, we've been around for 3 years, and we've always been remote. So I think the acceptance factor has gone up. The employees are actually a lot more comfortable that way as well. In fact, at least the employees that we work with, I mean, it's also helps if as leaders, as management lead the team, also kind of embraces this new mindset that we cannot and we should not be tracking every single minute that the worker or employee spends in your company and how they what they do. And I think that those days are gone. It should be more about results, oriented. I mean, as long as you're delivering the results, how you do it, when you do it, it doesn't really matter. And if that is the mindset that people deploy, then I think remote work becomes possible. And I've seen a lot of companies. In fact, in Bali has kind of become a haven for digital nomads. We see a lot of companies here, working out of Bali, and they're working out of cafes and co-working spaces. And I think that is a huge um, positive change, the way I look at it. On the negative side, of course, um, because of globalization, as the economies basically come closer together from different countries, it of course affects us. Pauline mentioned about the effects of oil prices going up in Singapore. One thing that affected me personally from COVID was the rental prices in Singapore going up.
Yes.
So my rental price in Singapore actually shot up by 40%, 40%. And so, and this was
It's
a
huge.
direct, yeah, and this was a direct impact of being in lockdown for 2 years. So what happened in Singapore was, because of this whole COVID lockdown, a lot of the constructions of new properties stopped. And because the construction stopped, all the young couples who have booked their apartments, and with the hope of moving into new apartments, they suddenly had no new, their homes were not ready. So they had to now find rental, apartments to kind of move into, at the earliest. And also, I think during the pandemic, a lot of families realized that small shoebox apartments are not the way to go. Because if you're going to start working from home, you need an office space at home. You need a home office, so you need a larger apartment. So all of those kind of things also kind of helped to increase the rental prices, which has affected a lot of people in Singapore.
Yeah.
And so food prices have gone up because the real estate has gone up. Restaurants have been affected. In fact, a lot of retail businesses have gone out of business because a lot of people have started using online, purchasing. Online purchases has become the norm in many countries. Before pandemic, it used to be like we would think twice about buying anything online because we wouldn't be sure about the quality or how do I return something. But I think with 2 years of staying at home, that has now changed as well. People are more comfortable purchasing things online, and which has drastically affected retail businesses. And again, from a Singapore perspective, I think, again, Pauline, you probably know this better than anybody else. You walk down Ion in Orchard Road, all these glitzy malls, the retail outlets are generally empty. Generally, people are buying, but not to the extent they used to. A lot of the purchases happen online these days. The only places which are really crowded are the F&B outlets. Uh, you know, but that's all part and parcel of how the world has evolved because of what has happened around the world.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to just add on to what Nilesh has said, and I agree with him what he has said wholeheartedly. The acceptance of change is there, and definitely the pandemic helped that. So that's a good thing about it, because as we were using the polytechnic system, the educational system in Singapore, prior to that, right? The old-fashioned system is we have to print out. When we're doing marks processing, when we're doing mark sheets, everything has to be printed out, signed, co-signed. We have to file them up for 6 months before we're destroying it and all these things. But when we went into lockdown, immediately everything was online. They decided that it was fine. Everything can be done online, using e-signatures, putting on shared drives, uploading them on that, marking everything online. So it's the tools are always there. Actually, it's just that last mile, no one wanted to do that change. So the pandemic really pushed a lot of things, really accelerated that change. Because even prior to pandemic, we did have my institution actually had a remote week. We actually did try to prepare ourselves. So, or every module, every school actually has to have a 1 week online. just in case. And so when we did the conversion to full online, on one hand, we have done it before, online teaching, but the other hand, of course, it's still different. And it was a lot of, we really, it was a steep learning curve for some tutors, or some educators, of course, find it easier. It really depends on your comfort with technology at that point. In terms of the negative effects of it, yes, unfortunately, I think when we came out, some still say officially, I think we're still not out of pandemic. WHO has not declared it yet, but there was some optimism, but unfortunately, Ukraine and Russia already caused. I think it just exacerbated a inflation that problem that was already starting to show its head, and then of course the
Yes.
conflict happened, so that made it worse. So I think now, currently, going forward, is more of the future globalization. It's being impacted by the economy, or I mean economics of the world at the moment, and the next few years might be a bit more gloomy, a little bit on the downturn. Not so much about due to globalization, but it's just more of the usual eps and the usual downward trends and upward trends of economics. Actually, we have to just unfortunately ride it out the next few years, perhaps. Now, the thing is whether globalization can ease that. That's something else, and whether as educators can we then prepare our students for when after the downward, there's always an uptrend. So when that happens, with the students, our students be ready for the next, maybe a next leap of change again.
Right, right. So definitely it's, there's some cycles, or it's a little bit cyclical, like Pauline. Like sometimes we go through those trends. So perhaps during the pandemic, we could see, the effects on the supply chain. There were already going to be inflationary issues cropping up, but the war just exacerbated that furthermore. And I think, given these, there's some interesting questions now in the chat, and I know we had mentioned earlier that we wanted to kind of tackle these towards the end of the session, but maybe just to guide our discussion, we'll kind of be moving towards how this globalization ideas are affecting workplace and work attitudes and work practices as a combination. But these questions are really in particular about globalization in a conceptual manner and a social, political, geopolitical manner. So if you don't mind, we'll kind of touch on these now because we're in the thread, in the thread of the discussion about this. So the first question we have from our audience is, what are your thoughts on the opinion of globalization as just westernization in disguise? Okay, so this is a little bit, a little bit political leaning, but it seems that Asia in general tries to emulate Western lifestyles and then call it globalization. Okay, so we've been talking about the positive and negative effects, but I guess this question's pointing towards, is
Culture.
globalization just a cultural idea that is, from the West? And when we talk about it, does that mean that Asia is just trying to emulate the West? Do you agree with this, or do you have other opinions?
Well, I think globalization in this case, I mean, this question specifically seems to suggest more of the issue of culture, but actually, it's not so much West. If we take globalization on its own, historically, globalization has always happened. I mean, we've always traded around the world. It's just maybe in the past was slower, and and there were lesser commodities being traded, but it's actually historically it's always been not just a Western thing. It's the Silk Road is one of the oldest international trading
Yes.
route. And then even Neolithic times, I mean, because I did food and culture and historical food and culture stuff before, Neolithic times, there's enough evidence to suggest that even at that time, the pre-human cultures, they were already trading spices. So,
Mm,
it's always been, it's not a Western, I mean, if we're talking about culturally speaking, then it's another kind of globalization. I know what you're referring to. It's more like the way you dress, the mindset, the lifestyle. I don't think it's not so much. I don't agree. I don't think it's really more of emulating Western lifestyles. It's more of maybe a more global lifestyle. You've seen, young people now, they see a lot of everything on the internet, right? You really have access to the world via
yes.
the internet. So definitely there will be an impact on the person's mindset, how he sees the world. So things will change definitely as a result, how they want to live
Right.
their life. Yeah.
Right, right. I like the references to historical events, the Silk Road, and all of that. That really are promoting different cultures, global trade, global exchange. It's just that maybe the storytelling it really depends on which part of the world you're in, right? Because um, you have maybe a Western perspective on how those events have happened, but you also have Eastern perspective, Oriental perspective, what have you. However you want to call it, even it'll just depends really on which part of the world you're from and how you're discussing it. I mean, just on this topic in particular, my input here, and it would have been interesting to have also Jake join us today. Unfortunately, my colleague here from the Philippines, expert educator, more than 20 years of experience. Unfortunately, his daughter kind of fell sick, so he has to attend to him. But I think he would also agree with me, say that if you look at the K-pop phenomenon, okay, so you look at that, it's a media play. It's like you're looking at that, but it's highlighting a Korean culture that is embraced by millions and millions from both East and West, right? People enjoy being entertained by the Korean K-pop phenomenon. Sure, they have influences in music and culture from the West, but they kind of owned it and remade it and still promoting a lot of Korean values. So now their tourism activities, you want to go there and embrace Korean culture, Korean food, and that is just an example of globalization, right? And it's not necessarily a Western thing. Maybe it adapted some media techniques that have been shown maybe in the beginnings by some Western counterparts, but that's very unique Korean culture being embraced by the world. So I think there's a lot of room for the exchange of cultural ideas wherever they're coming from. Couple of other questions here. Again, we'll just touch on these before you go back to the future work. They're talking about the narratives. Okay, there's some unintended uh, consequences of globalization, and probably this is the last question. We'll touch on this concept. Some are saying that there's an oppressive historical narrative versus marginalized narrative. So I guess so again related to who's telling the story. If you look at, let's say, some cultures that were taken over, or they're not being able to express their culture versus a more oppressive historical narrative. Any thoughts on this? Is this a valid view of globalization, that there is actually someone just dictating their narrative versus not allowing others to express their own narrative?
I think maybe I can chime on that. From what we are observing on the ground with ACAD Asia, especially when we deal with teachers and schools around Asia, and we work with all kinds of schools. We work with international schools, private schools which are very well funded, or public schools which may not have the best funding available, tertiary level schools, and all kinds. And in a way, when you start uh, looking at it from the perspective of globalization and the unintended and detrimental effects that, say, in this case, edtech has had. Okay, on the ground, I can see that hey, there is a huge gap, huge gap between those institutions who have access to all the funding, and they can basically get the best tools possible for their teachers and staff and even students. The students have access to iPads and books, and they can get fast connectivity to internet. They have all kinds of tools available. Whereas on public school sectors, and especially in some countries, where they have nothing. In fact, in some of the countries, like for example in India, I know for a fact there are some remote areas where the government is finding it very difficult to even get teachers to go and work in those kind of remote places, right? So in a situation like that, obviously, um, the effects, the the unintended effects of what we would consider whole, education technology can help everybody and can save everybody. Yes, but it still is at the moment available to people with resources. And yes, it's a fact that the people with the resources basically control the narrative, because the ones who don't have the resources have no way to share their point of view or narrative at all. So this, of course, is quite a negative impact, I would say. Now, can this be changed? Yes, it can be changed. But of course, then the governments need to have the willpower to put into place all the resources and the tools needed. And the unfortunate bit is that a lot of governments today are spending a lot more on their military and army and warfare rather than education. In fact, again, I won't name countries, but I know, I'm pretty sure that all of you know there are some countries in ASEAN which spend a lot more on building up their military and weaponizing their army and all of that, rather than spending it on education where it really matters, and which is the unfortunate thing. So and there are countries where Wi-Fi is not available everywhere, or even if it is available, it is so slow that literally, I mean, even just to kind of watch a stream of video, it becomes a problem. So in situations like that, how do you then even think of sharing your narrative? Because your main objective is not even to share narrative. I just want to kind of get access to basic education. That's it. That's what I want at the moment, and even that's not available at times. So um, I think this could have major impact moving forward, because right now, most, even if you look at edtech, or even if you look at in the case of, like, say, teacher training, a lot of teacher training material comes in from the West. Uh,
Mm.
you know, Local material is available, but the local uh, training consultants are not able to get out their material and deliver it at scale. Whereas you find some of the universities, the larger universities from the West, coming in, and they can do all of this at scale because they have the resources, they have the finances to be able to fund this. A lot of the people in this part of the world don't have that. So that is a big issue, the way I look at it at the moment, and that needs to be really addressed quickly. We were talking about internet and connectivity. Um, and I think that's like a basic human right these days. Internet connectivity should be a human right, but how many people can even access basic internet? It's very difficult. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, definitely I agree here. Yeah, Pauline, do you have any quick comments about that?
No, I was about to point out. I mean, in 2016, the UN declared access to internet as a basic human right, but
Mm.
that's access to internet. Now, the idea is, I think there was some talk following that declaration whether you know giving giving internet access to everyone, regardless of income, or regardless of whether you're paying or not paying. Should there be a basic kind of internet free internet access, basically free Wi-Fi and so on, across the world eventually? Because it has come to a point where we cannot really not cannot really function. Some, I mean, in very urban, very developed country, cities in Asia or any part of the world, you kind of need to have the internet. You need to have your phone linked to the internet to do things, to get things done nowadays. So there has been some talk, but I think that is quite a while away still. So yeah, it depends on individual countries, and unless of course Elon Musk Starlink tech does something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely the access to technology and the access to that. I mean, and that kind of leans into a little bit of another question here in the chat, which I'll steer this discussion back to the future of work, right? Because we have these globalization effects, and maybe if at any point, Pauline, if you want to, feel comfortable sharing what you want to share later. So some are questioning here in the chat, do they think globalization actually reduced the poverty gap or increased the poverty gap. And this kind of points to also Nilesha's point of the access to, these resources, to technology, to the internet. So we see, those with a bit more resources, a bit more access to information, they're more mobilely upward, so they can kind of, select from a wider range of job positions and job roles. But even if you look at those, let's say, middle income segments, or those have at least a bit more access to more options, with the speed and the rapid change of technology, it's even affecting them. So what more? Even those are just trying to catch up, right? So and you have global effects, all these things. So you're looking at really a lot of external factors that are driving how economies are run, how businesses are transforming. They're good and bad things, or they're pluses and minuses, or they're new kind of opportunities created, but it's also kind of changing the way the old practices are being done. So you're seeing a lot of these movements in totality. So how does that trend of globalization are affecting the future of work? How are we seeing, let's say, if we can be more specific, I think Nilesh already mentioned about remote work and virtual teams. How about the impact of automation and AI on employment, right? So as things are becoming more automated, we have chat GPT coming in. There's the global kind of workforce. How do you see these things affecting the nature of work in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
I think this one, it's a lot of factors affecting this issue of poverty gap, whether in reducing, increase. I'm just looking at the question, but I think picking off where you're coming from, Roy. Um, the thing is, the next few years is we are in a very uncertain time due to the conflicts and inflation. So the next few years, it's a little bit more rocky. There will be, I think there is unfortunately increase in the poverty gap from the pandemic to now, and that one unfortunately it's really out of our hands. I mean, it was during the pandemic, loss of jobs. There was a lot of jobs. A lot of things got regressed, and whatever progress across developing countries and developed, I mean, it just regressed a little bit. We lost about quite a few years of progress. Now, but going forward, we can see the negative of globalization, but I think what we need to focus on is the good that it can do for the world and for a world economy. Because the pandemic happened, and it did, with the globalization did, it stalled a little bit. It slowed down, but I think now it's coming back up. And I think going forward, while automation and AI it was already slowly coming up even before pandemic, and some jobs have already been replaced by automation. Automation relates to robotics. The factories are all robotic, all automation long ago. So jobs have already been changed before that. So we shouldn't be too hyped up on these keywords. The idea is going forward, new opportunities are always there. It's about trying to see those opportunities, keep open mind about them, and try to, as educators, I think we need to tell the students we ourselves and also need to express that they need to learn to be nimble, really be flexible, and really pivot when things happen or they see a possible opportunity there. Nowadays, with the internet, with all the resources available to them, even if you're you're in a developing country, if you see the opportunity, it's easier to make something out of it. I don't know. I'm thinking when I was young, I don't really internet came to me only in my later years, right? So it's like nowadays it's so easy for a young kid, a young teenager to start a global campaign, a charity run. It's so many options out there for them if they just want to change the world. So to me, I feel that the poverty, what we will see now in the next few years is, unfortunately, there will be increase in inequality. But I don't think it's so much to do with globalization. That's to do with world economics, politics, and the results. After effects of pandemic. But we can, of course, then grab onto globalization and all the good things that come with it, and be prepared to really take the opportunities it offers us, and make something really new in the future.
Yeah, actually, I concur with Pauline on this. I think there's always the pros and the cons, right? I mean, from a I think a lot of this will depend whether it'll reduce or increase the poverty gap. I think a lot of it will really depend on government policies. Um, there's nothing else to it. It's basically how the governments in each of these countries kind of lead their countries into the years ahead. I think the positive impacts of globalizations are wide. For example, trade and investment can, of course, help create jobs. It can help increase incomes, and this is plainly evident in countries like India, where over the last couple of years, now the middle class is literally booming because of all the opportunities, employment opportunities that the government has managed to create in that country. But on the other hand, there are also uh, possibilities of increased inequalities. Um, and also, this is also quite evident these days that it seems at times that only a few people are controlling the majority of the wealth. And if you really think about it, I read this article somewhere a couple of months ago that if the top five of the richest people in the world, gave away, I think even like 80% of their wealth, they would still be the top five people. That's the kind of money which a few people are controlling, whereas you've got millions who don't even have enough to put 2 meals a day for on the table for their families. So that inequality is also there, and my fear is, especially for the younger generation, my fear is that this inequality is actually going to rise more than anything else, because everybody talks about liberalization and democratic principles of doing business, and only the strong survive and things like that, which is great. But we are talking about fellow human beings, and if people are not starting off with the same conditions in a race, then the battle has already been lost for all the people who don't have anything to. So, like, just imagine if you're running 100 meters dash, and you're competing with people who don't even have access to spikes to run on. Maybe they don't have access to world class training like you have. They are already at a disadvantage, and the same thing that is what I fear is going to happen with increased level of globalization if the governments do not change their policies across the board. So it's completely reliant on how the governments actually move forward. And even in education, it's exactly the same. And that is also why I think if you look at this kind of a scenario, like what Pauline mentioned, that a lot of jobs have become obsolete. Right? It's already started happening. And something like ChatGPT, for example, has already I think in the last 3-4 months, you can clearly see copywriting, storytelling, all of that. Those jobs are in real big trouble. And this is just version 3 of ChatGPT. Imagine, 4 years, 5 years down the line, when the AI becomes even more smarter. So in a situation like that, my question to our fellow teachers would be, how are you prepared to help your students today? Are you aware of the future work? Are you aware of what roles and what jobs you need to prepare your students for? And if not, then you are doing a big disservice to your students, because you should not be preparing your students for jobs which are available today, because most of those jobs are going to disappear very, very quickly. But there will be new jobs. And I think as teachers, we need to really take time to upskill ourselves with the knowledge of knowing what is going to happen 4, 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And what do we do today to help our students then? So yeah.
Abs- Absolutely, well said, Neil. It's like, as you say, governments really have to have the political will to allocate resources towards things that will prepare their nations, their societies, their citizens for the future of work. And one of the great things that is, I think, a fantastic catch up is education. because then if you have an informed citizenry with equipped with the right skills and the right knowledge to adapt and meet the challenges of the future head on, then you have a chance. And to give ourselves a chance, we as educators, our role is crucial. The role we play is crucial in this scenario, because we ourselves need to understand or have a view of, okay, in the future this is how it's going to look. Then we got to prepare our young people today for that future. um, Maybe Pauline, I can invite you right now if you want to kind of share your slides, just to kind of give us how do we got here, and then what are we looking at, and then we can lead that to towards then how what will learners need to kind of prepare for in this future, and how we as educators can prepare our young learners towards that future. Maybe if you'd like to kind of run through some of your material.
Yeah. I will do that. Just give me a quick one. I want to just follow up with what Nilesh ended with, which is the role of the educator, and then we're going to prepare our students
Mm.
for the future. I think it's particularly, I think, more true for Asia, because of the way the Asian approach to studying. We have it's not so much. It's not just the educator needs to upgrade. Definitely, we need to constantly upgrade, upskill, and reskill, and then make sure the students are prepared for the future. But the problem now is the mindset. The mindset is a very big issue.
Mm.
Most of the ways we've been teaching in Asia in particular, it's very static, and it's about reading the book, and then memorizing the facts, and then it tests, and you have that. It's very static, and then and it's the Asian kind of teaching. It's very the educator to teacher is really very present, very forward in the student's life. But that has a problem. I mean, the last 2 years in the pandemic with the online learning, remote learning, we for my school and from my own module, we have already noticed that remote studying, I mean, like home-based learning and all this, it really works very well for overachieving students who have very good basics and so on. They can study on their own, and they're fine with online and everything. But you have students who, unfortunately, if they're either just generally a little bit more slacking, or their environment, the home environment is just not conducive and so on, then they start they start falling back. So that's one issue too. So we realize that it's about the mindset. How do we get the students to be responsible for their own learning, to be self-directed, to feel the need to study even when the teachers didn't tell them to study, right? So it's quite tough. I think that's the thing we're looking at now, is about the mindset. So I just wanted to end on that note, in sense that
Sure.
a follow-up from Neil, what Neilish said. So now for my slides, because we've already covered quite a lot of things, and I've already hide some of the I kind of condense it a little bit more. So I will show it, I will share with you guys, and then we can run them. Don't worry, if it looks very wordy, guys, I will run through them quickly. All right.
Yeah, just to give our audience, I guess, some sort of visual context as
Yeah.
we're talking about globalization, future of work. How do learners prepare? How do educators and education students prepare? It'll be kind of nice to get that snapshot of what are we looking at, and um, how where do you see it going. So yeah, Pauline, please go ahead.
Yep, I've already, you can share. So it's already shared?
Yes, we can see it on the
Okay.
screen now.
All right, great. So I just did a quick overview of globalization, just some points on the impact of COVID-19 and beyond, and then the future of work. So, guys, it's just, and if you have any questions, do just put it on Menti, and then we will follow up with that later on. Now, this is just a basic definition of globalization. You can get it in any dictionary. The increase of trade around the world, especially by large companies producing and trading goods in many different countries. So this is a very basic definition, for modern day take on globalization. Now, having said this, I want to look at the history of it a little bit. So I'm not going to go through all the ages. The globalization 1.0, globalization 2.0, these are actually the another word for it was the industrial revolution, actually. So this is actually from this is from UN itself, I think, the World Economic Forum, sorry. So this is just a general chart, just give you an idea where we've come from. This is more westernized take, yes. So the age of discovery and globalization 1.0 is more of the colonial times. But during 15th to 18th century, it was also China doing the Silk Road, the Asia, Middle East, and Europe were trading through the Silk Road, through the age of discovery. And then, of course, globalization 1.0 is more during the colonial times, and then followed by the World War One, and then of course globalization 2.0, which is also industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, right, was impacted first by World War Two, and then after that, the beginnings of of digitals. We're coming to the third industrial revolution where digital uh, digitalization begins. All right, so this is basically just a snapshot, but we are looking at, I'm going to focus on globalization 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. It actually started around the year 2000s and it's still ongoing. We're still in the fourth industrial revolution. I think people are trying to coin out the term fifth industrial revolution soon, but let's just keep to the fourth one first. All right, so let's go down straight to this. Now, I'm not going to say all this, but we basically are living in the fourth industrial revolution. It's it's all about innovation. It's all about, of course, artificial intelligence, high computing power, big data, and so on. All right. So the key driving factors, of course, is the decreasing cost of computing power and connected devices. That really helped a lot, along with cost of Wi-Fi going down too. That really helped a lot. All right. So it has impact across everything: science, medicine, other technologies, culturally, societally. This fourth industrial revolution is where we are living in now, actually. Now, but unfortunately, of course, we've mentioned it just now, inequality has risen. So this is even before pandemic. There was a growing inequality. And then, of course, the new ones that we've seen, especially during the pandemic, where everyone depends on digital devices and Wi-Fi, is cybersecurity risks. All right, and then and how core industries has been disrupted too. So, give you an example, like during pandemic, none of us could go to the cinema, so we all started streaming from Netflix and online avenues and so on. So that has really changed. It was ongoing, and then the pandemic really accelerated it quickly. Now, so give an example, the iPhone. All right, this is a truly international American product. However, because of the politics, I know now the government, they are trying. Apple, I think, is trying to not depend on parts from China, so they are trying to set up. They're trying to set up, but see, it's still globalization, because I know I think they're trying to set up factories in Vietnam, so it's still not in US. So it's still international, but it, of course, politics sometimes disrupt and end up affecting the picture. But it's still globalized the world, and because of that, our cars, our phones, everything now, the parts all come from all around the world. It is just impossible to not have one of our technological devices, especially, not be international. Parts from everywhere. This is more of the words, the trending words for fourth industrial revolution, where we talk about autonomous robots, as we pointed out just now, simulation, VR. VR is something that has been around too, but has not really taken off yet. I mean, and Facebook, Metaverse, they're trying. There's a lot of system integration now. So we are looking at one app, like I think there's Grab, the Grab app alone. I mean, it's in many parts of Asia. It's trying to integrate everything from not just food delivery. I think it's trying to be it's trying to be a bank, e-bank, and then it's going everywhere. The companies are trying to integrate everything together. Industrial, Internet of Things, cybersecurity is an issue now. Everything's in the cloud. Augmented reality is linked to simulation. So again, it's all about the VR effect. Thing, of course, big data, analytics, and so on. So this is just the things we've been hearing that's linked to the fourth industrial revolution. Some of us, maybe know more about this than others, but basically, how that links to the future of work. Now, the future of work essentially is just about world of work shifts and changes over time. There's always been a future of work. All right. The future of work refers to an informed perspective on how work could shift and how workforces and workplaces can prepare for those changes. So we just need to be aware. And I think one thing we need to also bring this across to students. They need to read. They need to read the news. They need to know what's going on in the world to better prepare for the work, the shifts and changes of what's going on around the world. Because as you mentioned it just now, what's happening over that part of the world will impact on this part of the world immediately or maybe a few years down the road. So the future of work is about actually it's an informed perspective, all right, and it's about really having enough information, data, and also having a broad, open mind to what is going to happen, what is most likely going to happen. So the idea, I think, is not to put blinders on and then just going about your business as usual, and then later when change is forced on you, you get very unprepared and really upset about everything. Now, the latest on future of work, this is by McKinsey Global Institute. So they've done some research in some of the key eight globalized industrial countries. So the belief is 1 in 16 workers will have to switch occupations by 2030. Most of the job growth will be concentrated in high skill jobs. Unfortunately, that therefore we've mentioned it just now too. Middle and low skill jobs will decline. All right. So middle and low skill, we're looking at from a little bit of blue collar to even the white collar middle management or the entry level kind of white collar jobs too.
Yeah, I
But
think Nilesh was mentioning about, let's say, copywriting skills.
yeah,
If it's an AI, maybe looking at, probably even construction skills as robots do more, a lot of the manufacturing. There's a lot of jobs that will kind of transition over this period.
even I think I remember having this discussion with a friend of mine about 6 to 7 years ago. Already at that time, accountancy. You think accounting it's a very sure
Mm,
fire industry, but she was there was already talk in the industry that they need to upskill because AI is going to be doing the most basic calculations and input
mm,
computations. They have to if you don't want if you need to be upskilled and then go into the business development side, or you'll be out of a job. So
right, right.
yeah,
So business skills for accountants, they're not just,
yeah.
bean counters anymore. They have to kind of
No.
think more strategically. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So it's some job categories have seen more growth than others due to the pandemic. So e-commerce really got shot up, got was really boosted by the pandemic, and as a result, other new opportunities arise. So that's where we look at it when there's something, it's about trying to grab those opportunities when you see it. Now, the next big thing that everyone should take a look at is the green economy across the world. Actually, the green economy is definitely something that it's a big boom. It's where the next boom will happen.
Growth areas. Yeah.
Growth area, yeah. So that's something to think about. And unfortunately, aging populations in many advanced economies will also afford some new opportunities there too. So it's really
Mm,
about keeping an open mind and really just be prepared for some new job that suddenly appear, or you create your own job scope. Yeah, at the end, right?
right.
So yeah, so unfortunately, there will be some things that will be lost due to AI and robotics. So that one we can unfortunately stop change. Now, the pandemic accelerated, as we mentioned, a lot of things: remote work, virtual meetings, e-commerce, and also generally a faster adoption of digital technology. So that really is the crux. I think that's why if anyone feels a little bit more overwhelmed, it's because the pandemic sort of made it faster, like about 3 to 5 times faster. So that's the problem. I don't think we'll feel the change that sudden. Basically, this is actually from the CEO of Grab. He wrote an article on this late on the future of work in Southeast Asia,
Mm,
and he feels that basically there is new digital work opportunities. It's about keeping a mindset change, skill set change. You really need to see the gaps and where you can find a niche. And then, of course, you can work anywhere, just like a Nilesh in Bali. You can go anywhere to work, you know. And then the workforce itself changing, worker priorities are so the boss the employer needs to be flexible too. So there should be
Mm.
flexibility, and and respecting the changing worker priorities. Those who really feel that they would like to have a flexi, 2 days at home, 3 days in the workplace kind of arrangement. You should be open to discussion instead of immediately shutting it back on, shutting that door
Mm.
off, and then asking everyone to come back to the office. So
Mm.
that's one of his take on the future of work in Southeast Asia. Um, this is of course by Bill Gates. I think the thing is we tend to overestimate the change that will occur the next 2 years and underestimate the change. So I think the idea is that we cannot be lulled into inaction, but we also do not want to overreact and or get so fearful that we become, that end up being no actions. We just stay still. So I think we just need to accept the fact that change is definite, and then to really and then of course express that to our students and make them understand that they need to be prepared for the constant change, and don't feel anxiety over it. Instead, take it as a form of opportunity of
Mm.
of new things to come. Now, the other thing to think about is, of course, for us educators, technology is replacing jobs. Are you ready? Will educators be replaced? Actually, they say no lah. Educators will still be needed, so we will not be replaced. Most educators, trainers, I think we will not be replaced so easily. Um, but it is the age of accelerated change. There is technological disruptions. I think as educators, we kind of need to be open to new tools and programs and apps. If it's available to us, we should try it and not be upset about it. It will take. There's always a learning curve, and we have to be prepared to at least try it. And then, of course, in that same breath, right, share that kind of mindset with our students, and I think that will take them far. Because I think the fear now is a lot of the students, if we only teach them via the old-fashioned way of rote learning, textbook, yeah, as Dinesh pointed out, by the time they graduate, half or more of their acquired knowledge is already obsolete. So we kind
Mm.
of need to be fluid in our take on technology, and also telling them to be. Now, this was sent to me to talk about. I think we've mentioned it a little bit already. The impact of COVID-19. So it did accelerated change, but it also kind of sent shockwaves through the world economy. So did trigger the largest global economic crisis, and unfortunately, is that crisis has not been, we have not recovered from it. So it's a bit of a double whammy, basically. All right, we have automation, AI being accelerated. There's a lot of change going on, and suddenly that will accelerate the loss of jobs. And then you have post-pandemic conditions, due to the economic crisis, conflicts around the world, and inflation and all this. So there is a lot of things going on at this point of time. So it's a lot of uncertainty going about. Now, the answer to it, I don't know. To me, is of course, I think what Neelash has also been saying is, of course, digitalization. We do need it is um, still a good leveling tool, and it's one way to really try to really get a grasp of the future of work. So we need to be really able to learn on our own, remote learning, to be able to, we should try to also be open to remote work ourselves. I know it's affects some of my colleagues didn't really like the remote work from home during the lockdown. They were really upset. All right, and so the idea is that there's
Mm.
many. There's many. Some people might like remote work. Some really hate it. Want to go back to the office or go back to school. So we kind of need to be flexible about it nowadays. Then, of course, e-conferencing or virtual teams. This is very important. This is the answer to part of all these issues that we're facing now, which is really being able to do remote work, to work in virtual teams. So my next slide is linked to this, and that is about collaboration and change. So for my school, we are looking at this as a very important component for the students going ahead. They need to be nimble in responding to change. They need to discover and adopt better modes of collaboration, virtually and face to face. But basically, there's hardly any jobs in the world now that is that you're allowed to work in a silo, which means no interaction. You just do your thing. I mean, even if you're doing a craft, even if you are a artist and you're doing your own artwork, eventually you want to sell it or you want to put it on a display. So there is a collaborative element to it too. So we do realize that discover we modes of collaboration is very important in virtual teams, teams, and so on, and remote work. You do need to have very good collaborative skills. So and then from there, we need to keep harping on students and ourselves about reskilling and upskilling. They need to understand this is a lifelong thing. In the past, you graduate, you get your degree, you think that I made it, I'll get a job, yay, and that's it. Unfortunately, it's not true. Going forward, they need to graduate, get that paper, that degree, that cert, that diploma, and then every other few years they need to upgrade and upskill, or not they're gonna be left behind. Yeah, it's kind of like a really a lifelong thing that they need to really believe in, and so that they'll take responsibility for it. And when they do the courses going forward, um, it's not just they're just not going through the motions. They really need to learn and really upskill themselves, and then they will not be caught out if there's a new change in the technology, there's an uptick of change, they will not be left behind. It's very important for that, and it applies of course to us too. Now so that's more or less what I have in terms of just an overview of the the globalization and the future of work. Yeah, so that's what I have.
I think if I could just quickly add on to that, Pauline, I think that was wonderful, Sharon. But if I could just add on to that, I mean, just to put things in perspective, here we are on a Wednesday evening, right, where you're based in Singapore, Roy is based in Manila. I live in Bali, but I'm currently traveling to Manila as well. But and we've got an audience from all around the world. Including the far-flung state of Meghalaya in India, which is in the northeast part of the country, right?
In
Now, can you
Mongolia too.
imagine?
Yep.
Yeah, and Mongolia too, exactly. Here we are discussing, about the future of work and globalization. And can you imagine trying to do this 3 to 4 years ago? Okay, people would not have even conceived the idea that this would be possible. We wouldn't.
It's
I mean,
almost
we had
unthinkable.
Skype.
It's almost unthinkable. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, we had Skype back then. I mean, people used to use Skype, but nobody thought that you could run an entire virtual event on Skype and invite people from all around the world to attend and learn at the same time from different time zones, right? So, but here we are. And this change has basically happened over the last 3 years. So you can just imagine what else is possible and what is coming. And in fact, I would also like to share this quote that I came across. This is from John F. Kennedy, the ex-president from the United States, where he says, change is the law of life, right? And those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. And this is so apt in the times that we are living today. I mean, Pauline, you spoke about mindset. People need to really change the mindset. And this is exactly what it is. You really need to change the mindset and really look towards the future rather than saying, oh, this is how we used to do things, or this is how we should continue doing things. And especially as educators, I think for somebody like me, half of my life is already gone. So as an educator, what I need to now really look at is how can I make lives of my students better, not my life. Half of my life is already gone. So yeah, I mean, this is all about globalization right here, right now, and it's happening live on YouTube, LinkedIn, all these channels. Yeah.
And it's really about the young people. We're preparing them for this future. In fact, Pauline, I like what you said in your presentation about it's like a lifelong learning mindset, and this is something that we've always been advocating here at ACAD Asia, where not only for our learners but we as educators ourselves, we need that lifelong learning, that growth mindset. And I just want to share an excellent comment from one of our audience here, and I'll just post it on the screen now. Don't mind the typos. With globalization, there is a need for a harmonized, I guess his suggestions on how educators should prepare, a harmonized credentialing in education, valuing the openness to changes and upskilling of graduates, right? Wouldn't it be interesting, as Neil is talking about the possibilities of the future, maybe one day there is a way to kind of have these are the skills we need to approach the future with. And as education institutions dialogue, meet in communities like here in Acad Asia, we agree that these are the skill sets of the future as part of the globalization to move us forward. If one day we're going to move to Mars or trying to save our planet, these are the skills that we need to collectively contribute and agree on, and maybe bring up our learners to have these skill sets. Excellent comments also from our audience here. The Department of Education needs and governments need to kind of also embrace this and the future of work. I'll touch on a couple of questions because we're really running out of time. We have 10 minutes left and I still have to do some housekeeping. A couple of questions here regarding, I guess, technology per se and using it in AI. So a couple of questions here regarding teaching work. Should teachers be penalized for using AI tools to create, simplify, automate their unit planning and other clerical tasks? There seems to be this judgment that using AI is being lazy. This is an excellent question. I mean, dear educators, fantastic question. Pauline, Nilesh, is using AI for my unit planning for my lesson plans, is that being lazy?
We need to leverage what we have instead of immediately condemning it. I mean, yeah, of course we have. I mean, I think for our Singapore standpoint, the MOE, the Ministry of Education, has more or less agreed that we should try to leverage on it. But as us educators, and how are we going to leverage on it, and how we're going to let the students leverage on it is another issue. But we're not going to try to shy away from it. And I don't think it's. I mean, I know why they think it's lazy, but one thing I think all of us need to play with the chat, like ChatGPT or any other AI tools. They are not as intuitive as you think they are. You still need to input it
Right.
properly. So I realized that if you, knowing after teaching students for so many years, if the students, if you have a student that's a little bit less mindful and slacking and can't be bothered and just key in random stuff, and they're going to come up with really rubbish work anyway. It will not pass. It will not pass muster anyway. So it all boils down to, again, you do need to have that. You need to pay attention, know what you're doing, what you're inputting to even get something reasonable. So to me, I don't think it's lazy. I think we should use it and to definitely utilize it as much as we can. And we'll see where this will hit. I mean, now we only have a very rudimentary version of AI. I mean, the road for AI is still far and long. Yeah. So let's see where it ends up.
Interesting. Neil, sorry, you're muted, Neil. If you could unmute, please.
Muted, yeah.
My question would be to those administrators in the various academic institutions who are looking to penalize teachers for using AI. Did anybody penalize you when you started using calculators way back when calculators came out? Penalized for that? Were you told that how come you're not using the abacus, or how come you're not using your mind skill to kind of create? Well, you were not. You embrace technology, and AI is part of technology. And in fact, what administrators really need to understand is there are certain benefits of using tools like ChatGPT in terms of productivity, in terms of time saved, and doing clinical jobs. I mean, it's just repetitive jobs. I mean, there's a lot of time that teachers can actually save, and like what Pauline mentioned, the teachers need to be the masters of their own craft in order to figure out what prompts they should type in to the AI to get you those answers. If you're not putting in the right prompts, you won't get the right answers. So that requires some thinking, and you need some expertise in your subject area. So it's not that teachers are lazy. It's just that if something can help them come up with a starting point from which they can take and use to kind of build on, If it saves time, if it saves money, if it helps with productivity, why not? Why not? Why should they be penalized? I don't think teachers should be considered to be lazy if they're using AI tools.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We use every tool we have at our disposal. So, okay, we need to wrap up now. Maybe I can use this question as part of our final thoughts from both of you. I think it's another excellent question. So, the question is, and maybe you can start with Neil with this and end with Pauline. How will educators prepare themselves to be able to prepare learners also for globalization and the future of work? Right. So, how do educators prepare themselves for these future trends?
Well, I
As
think
our
the
final
writing,
thoughts.
yeah, I think the writing's pretty much on the wall, right? I mean, if the teachers are looking to prepare their students, there are a couple of things the teachers must be doing, must do. Number one, and I think Pauline mentioned this earlier, is the teachers really need to stay up to date with the latest trends and developments. Um, Read newspapers, watch the news, see what's going on. Even if you're teaching mathematics or even if you're teaching English, it is important for you to stay updated with what's going on. And it's not just by watching Instagram or TikTok reels, but really kind of understanding what's happening at a global level. That's number one. Number two, I would say, is to incorporate then, those global perspectives into your curriculum. So, for example, if you're teaching, say, mathematics, can you bring in the James Webb Telescope into your curriculum? Can you use James Webb Telescope as a subject to build your mathematics problems around? That's just a very simple example, but I mean, this could be translated in different subjects as well. So, like for example, if you're teaching history, can you, also talk about the history of telescopes, which is connected to what's happening today. So this way that students are also aware that this lesson is connected to what's going on today, but we are now looking at the history of telescopes, things like that. So then the other bit is to encourage students to study abroad. Of course, it's not always possible to do that. Many students may not be able to afford an international education. But in cases where this is possible, they should be encouraged. If not study abroad, at least go on excursion trips, immersion
Just
trips.
travel. Yeah.
Just travel. Just take a backpack and just go and travel, right? This is so important because when you travel, you meet new people, you experience new cultures, and you gain new perspectives about the world. You also need to emphasize the importance of language skills. I think this becomes very, very critical because a lot of miscommunication happens these days when people don't understand each other. So language skills become absolutely critical in a globalized economy. And the last thing I would say is to foster cultural sensitivity and awareness. Um, Again, if teachers don't understand the importance of cultural awareness and sensitivity, then it's very likely the students are not going to have this skill set, which is so important, moving forward. And in fact, I would like to take this opportunity to actually plug a course that one of our friends from Nian has actually created. It's called Cultural Intelligence for Educators. A very good course. Please go sign up. It's free, actually. You can actually sign up and you will actually learn about the importance of cultural intelligence from an educator's perspective. It has been designed by, I think, Andrew from Nian Polytech. So if you haven't seen that course, please go and have a look at it.
Fantastic, Neil. Thanks so much. Pauline, how will educators prepare themselves to
I
be
think
able
I
to better
think
prepare their learners?
I think Nilesh has mentioned everything, but maybe a more practical thing I will mention is perhaps the institutions, if they can subsidize the training of educators, upskilling of traders, that'll be really good. And also, if not cost, if they can't subsidize, I mean, if they can't sponsor all the training, subsidizing would be great, and also giving them the time off to do it. So I think that is how educators can prepare themselves and feel supported in doing this too, and being rewarded in that sense, right? At least being supported. I think not so much rewarded, but supported in preparing themselves to prepare their students for globalization. So they need to upskill, and it'd be great if the institutions can support them. The other thing I just want to quickly mention is the I don't know, I keep looking at Menti question 7. I just want to quickly mention about blended learning, because
Okay.
they asked this question about blended learning as a modality of education, even in primary grades. This is just because of anecdote from my own experience after the pandemic. We do realize, yes, blended learning we feel is the best. I mean, I personally feel is the best. I teach communications and I realize blending is better. So face to face with remote learning or self-directed learning. But arguably I think a lot of reports have, I mean, a lot of articles have been written. Online learning is not good for primary level because they do not have the basics yet, and the discipline, the self
Mm,
discipline, especially the lower primary, seven, 8 year, 8, 9. The older ones, more or less, the secondary school. That's, I think, when the circuit breaker happened. Secondary education is not so much affected, but primary one might, I think, was more impacted on. But I think blended learning is the key. I do not believe fully online is good too. There is some topics might be good, will work on full online, but some might not. So for students who are younger, I mean, students who are young children, teenagers, blended might be better, especially if you have weaker students. Yeah. So I just
Just
wanted to answer Menti question 7. It's just like,
thank you.
just
Yeah,
wanted
thank
to
you, Pauline. Thank you for
if I could just add
chiming
one
in on that.
more, if
Yes,
I
go
could just
ahead,
add
Neil.
one other additional thing, Roy. I think I mentioned earlier that one of the key things that teachers also need to kind of encourage their students to travel abroad and study abroad. And I mentioned that this may not always be possible with everybody, but here's one approach that the teachers might take, again from a practical perspective. How do you provide a global mindset to your student who cannot travel?
Mm,
So I think it is important then for institutions to really actively seek out partnerships with different schools and institutions from around the
yes.
world. Okay, and then if you have those partnerships, can you imagine the possibilities of, like, for example, Pauline teaches communication, and maybe if I'm teaching communication in Indonesia, can we do a joint project which could be done remotely? Where
Mm,
my students could work with Pauline's students using Zoom or any of these other tools. Or it could also be where, can let's work on a topic, and can your students present the Singaporean perspective of this particular topic, and my students present the Filipino or the Indonesian perspective to that same topic, and let's do a joint presentation and take notes and learn from each other. Those kind of opportunities are also, or rather should be, investigated. And I think that's so that kind of opens education up at a different level, because then even if you are unable to travel, as long as you have Wi-Fi, a computer, and a Zoom connection or a Google Meet connection, you should be able to do all of this. And in fact, on the AcadAsia platform, uh, if you are aware, and we have something called Colab Ed, which allows educators to connect and network with people with other teachers from all around the world. And as teachers, you should take full advantage of that, connect with teachers from all around the world, and find opportunities to collaborate with your classrooms. So this way you can see the world without having to spend a lot of money traveling there physically. Yeah, so
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll tackle that more at next week's event. Thank you for kind of highlighting that, Neil. If the young generation can consume so much social media, then they should also embrace different cultures using these. Thank you so much, Pauline and Nilesh, for the wonderful discussion today. We're a little bit over time, but that's okay. I'll just close this session with some last minute reminders before we say goodbye. So first, let me just share my screen. Some of you probably, I hope you had been watching from the beginning. Again, this is part of our new direction. We're offering better value for our members. If you are a member of Acad Asia for this webinar, Globalization Future Work, it comes with an accompanying course. And if you're already a member, you will get the course for free. If not, please sign up and support. So go to acadasia.com. You can sign into your account, or if you want to create an account for the first time, please sign up as a teacher account. Don't choose the other modes. Teacher account gives you the most access. After you sign in, come into Acadasia and fill in your profile and details, photo, your contact information details, of course, your institution and your education stage. Don't forget to add also your teacher's license or teacher's ID, government ID as your identity proof. And then when you come here, we talked about Collab Ed. You can engage with us here, chat, and discuss all sorts of topics, collaborate, travel from the safety of your home and your laptop or your device. There are lots of courses here. Go to SkillEd, as Neil mentioned. Nian Polytechnic has a great course on cultural intelligence for educators. Sign up for that. That is free. But if you are not yet a paid member, today's course, Globalization, the Future of Work, this is a paid course. I'm only seeing it now as free because I'm already a paid account holder. So paid accounts, please support us and you will get this account for free. Else you'll have to purchase this course. Here, for our friends in the Philippines, there are CPD points to be awarded along with this. Make sure that you will fill up all the requirements, complete these by March the 7th, and then we will process those, and the first 5,000 qualified completers will receive their certificates on the end of the month. And again, please, very important to complete all the requirements or else you will not get any CPD points. This is a paid course again, but it's free for our ACAD Asia members. Go to the end portion. Remember to fill up your CPD attendance form so that you can get your CPD points for our friends in the Philippines. If you're not from the Philippines, it's all right. You can still sign up if you have a paid account. Support us by going to your membership profile. Sign up for a silver membership here. And it's very affordable. Only less than $2 to $3 per month. Only less than $30 per year for this. And for next week, so we're talking about Collab Ed, building your international network on March 7th. That's Technology Tuesday. We'll be talking about how you can build your international network using Collab Ed. Okay, so again, don't forget, please purchase this course so you can get all the materials and the certificate. All our webinars are free to watch, but for members, you will get the CPD points for free as well. Just sign up for a membership today. All right. So on behalf again of our team, ACAD Asia, Pauline, thank you so much for joining us. Nilesh, thank you so much for your input. Jake, please take care of your daughter. We're praying for her so that she gets better. Looking forward to having you again on the next session. I'm Roy Puton again on behalf of the ACAD Asia and our panelists and our team. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody. Enjoy your week. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And good night. Bye-bye,
Good
everybody.
night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Hi everyone. Welcome to ACAD Asia. ACAD Asia is a Singapore-based impact-driven edtech startup that empowers the largest online community of education institutions and educators in Asia to upskill and reskill themselves to improve the learning outcomes for their 21st century learners. On acadasia.com, educators can access 4 specific services. First, Collab Ed, a social networking service that empowers education institutions to build their international network from all over Asia, and where individual educators can join a wide range of communities of teaching learning practice and engage in peer-to-peer learning. Second, Skill Ed, a professional development service that empowers educators to upskill and reskill themselves by accessing more than 1,000 hours of professional development content, all with formal CPD accreditations. In addition to this, academic managers from education institutions can track, measure, and improve the efficacy of all professional development that their faculty access on the platform, thus leading to better learning outcomes for their students. Third, Design Ed, the easiest course builder on the planet. In 5 simple steps, this service empowers educators to build fun, engaging, and quality content for their learners. Furthermore, third-party tools like Canva, Google, etc. are fully integrated right into Design Ed. Fourth, Certify Ed, a digital credentialing service that empowers education institutions to design, award, and track fully verifiable and tamper-proof digital micro-credentials and certificates on the blockchain. Join the largest community of educators in Asia who are already using the platform and sign up for your free lifetime membership at www.acadasia.com today.